Gotcha.
So first off, I want to echo what everyone else has said. Just thanking Sam and Bobby and everyone who put this together. With all the craziness that's kind of going on in the world right now, it's good to sit down and talk some ball with you coaches. So it's cool to see the turnout that we have. So yeah, my name's Matthew Jorgensen. I am the offensive line coach at Bayport High School. I've been the O-line coach there for 3 years, right after I graduated college. This is my first clinic or virtual clinic ever doing, so I'm pretty excited about that and just thankful for the opportunity. So the topic that I'm going to speak on today is using shifts and motions in our gap and gap option run scheme. We are primarily a gap offense at Bayport High School, so a lot of power, counter, power play action, and different plays like that. We run primarily out of 21 personnel, so about 95% of the time we got a tight end in the game, we got a fullback in the game, and we'll be in some over formations too, covering up the tight end, but we're primarily in pro right and pro left. But I think something that we do a good job at is using a lot of pre-snaps, movements, shifts, trades to kind of add a complexity to our offense while keeping it simple at the same time for our offensive players. I think if you get anything from me today, that's the most important piece, is making it simple for our old guys so they can play fast and physical, but yet it adds a lot that a defense kind of has to cover in terms of all of our read game that we get off of the pre-snap movement. So as an O-line coach, as I go into every week, scouting an opponent, I don't just like to look at like what their base fronts are. I also like to look at how they align to certain shifts and movements to see where we can get an advantage, because it's all about gaining small advantages. So maybe if we do a certain shift here or there, they might have a player out of place that he usually plays, and then they might not be properly aligned to where they typically are. So just gaining small advantages that way. So if you look on the screen right now, these are all of our play tags for our pre-snap movements and motions that we use. So I'll just go over them quickly, and then I'll kind of show some clips of each of them and kind of go over the benefits that we get out of them on offense and kind of the stress that it puts on a defense. So the top one here is shift. So when we say shift, that's just our backs moving. So our tailback and our fullback are moving. So maybe the tailback starts offset, then he shifts into a pistol formation. When we say move is our back shift and our tight end trades to the other side. As an O-line coach, this is probably my favorite one. I love trading the tight end, and I'll get into that a little bit more when we get to that slide. When we say trade is just our tight end and fullback moving. We really didn't use that one at all this year. We mainly always did the one above it and move. We moved both backs and the tight end. The one on here at the bottom is yo. I don't know how we came up with that word, but that's what we use when our tight end shifts off the line and becomes an extra fullback, or maybe just the only fullback, depending on the formation we use. Our most common type of motion that we use is what we call rip and liz. That's our jet motion or our rocket motion, depending on what your team calls it or the verbiage that you use. And then something we got a little bit more into this year is our Rob and Lou motion. So that is our orbit motion with our wideout coming behind our quarterback and our pistol running back. So for our like power triple option game that we did a little bit more of this year than the previous 2 years that I was at Bayport. So now we'll kind of go on and I'll show you how we call our plays. We try to keep it really simple for our guys. So when we're making a play call, we always call the formation, we call the pre-snap movement, and then we call the play. I don't think we really ever run any plays without some sort of pre-snap movement, whether it's shifting the backs, trading the tight end, bringing a wide out in motion. We typically always have that in there. So our players always know that's coming, and just by having it consistent down the line. So like, for example, we might say pro right, shift, power right. And another thing that we do to really simplify it for our guys and kind of dumb it down is we'll just throw players' names right in the play call. So everyone knows exactly what they have to do, and that guy specifically knows he's the one in motion. So if we got kind of our rip motion, so our rocket motion through, we might just say right, Mitch rip, rocket right. So we're putting his name right in there so that wideout knows he's the one in motion, and the other wideout's the one who's stalk blocking, crack blocking, depending on the call that we have. So we try to be really simple with our O guys, but by adding all the pre-shifts, movements, motions, I think it makes it complex for a defense to have to defend. So I think that's one of our strengths that we do well at Bayport. So now I'll kind of dive into each one of them and talk about like the strengths of each of them and kind of why we do it. So shift is when we just move our tailback and fullback to the opposite side of the formation, or if they're in offset, they shift to a pistol back. So here's just a little clip of it right here. Or tailback shift into a pistol and the fullback shift into the other side. One reason we like to do this motion is because with doing self-scouting and knowing what other teams are looking at, they know we have play tendencies when we're an offset back. They know offset back, we probably like to run a lot of our power read game, which we call iron. So then they might have a certain call to that. So if a couple seconds before the play starts, we shift them to a pistol back, it completely changes the plays that we might be running towards the defense and not give them as much time to adjust. So now it changes who our downhill power running back was. So when we're like this, our quarterback's most likely our downhill back, shift them here, now our running back is. So just adding a little bit of confusion to the defense pre-snap. And with a lot of these motions and movements, it may not seem like it's doing a lot or there's not much going on, but if you can get a defender to hesitate just for a split second, maybe get his eyes wrong, take his eyes off his key and watch the backfield movement, I think that can really make or break a play, and that can turn a 2-yard gain into a 5-yard gain, maybe into a long run, just by having some eye wash in the backfield, making them get their eyes wrong, or maybe overrun their power fill, so we can maybe bust a big run. So we shift there, and this is one of our pin and pull type plays, and we get a pretty big gain out of doing it. So our next type of movement is what we call move. As an O-line coach, I said before, this is my favorite one. So we're going to move the back, the fullback, and our tight end to the opposite side. I think you can gain a lot of advantages doing this. So here's an example of it right here. Pre-snap, quarterback yells move, fullback, tight end, and tailback all shift where they're standing. One reason I like this is if you're playing a D, that you know is going to call the strength towards the tight end a couple seconds before the ball snaps, their defensive strength immediately changes, maybe not giving them time to get set. Another reason I like it is if you're playing a team that maybe doesn't, if you swap the tight end, maybe their whole defense doesn't move across like this team does. They just kind of bump their D-line a little bit. I think you can gain a huge advantage that way, especially if you're playing a team that, like let's say a team's in a 3-4 and they have a really good 5 technique, and we still want to run our power strong. So we want to have a tray block with our tight end and our tackle, but we know that 5 technique's a heck of a player. Maybe just by shifting the tight end to the other side, we can go at their player that's not as strong as him and still have our strong run game. So just little adjustments like that. And the same goes for overhangs. If we know they have a really good outside backer who's closing it down, making our kick-out blocks tough for our guards on counter, for our fullbacks on power, we can go up to the line, trade the tight end to the other side, and run it maybe towards their kids that aren't as strong as some of their studs. Something that comes to mind when I think about that is it was like our level 3 game. For those who know Marquette, they had a pretty dang good kid at outside linebacker there. So we were just trying to like scout ways to be able to run our run game kind of away from him and kick out the other kids, because that kid's going to Wisconsin and he's a dude. So just little adjustments like that to try to gain an advantage. And other things we'll kind of look at too is just looking from this back view. So let's say if we come up to the ball in our normal 21 personnel, and let's say we know 10 is always lining up to the tight end and 43 is always lining up away from the tight end. Maybe 10 is always a plug player to our power game and 43 scrapes over the top. And if we shift our tight end to the other side and those 2 guys don't switch at inside backers, maybe they'll just play a little bit slower because they're reversing roles and it's not something that they're doing the majority of the time. So like I've been kind of hitting at the whole time, it's all about finding those little adjustments and those like maybe weaknesses in the defense to try to attack and make them just play a tad slower so you can take advantage of it. And the last reason I like flipping the tight end is you'll come across some teams who flip the whole defense. So their DNs will run across, their overhangs will run across, their backers will change. which I like to call a fire drill. I think that's a good way to kind of jump on teams and make them play a little bit slower, because maybe initially they're not focused on getting off the ball and watching the ball. They're focused on, okay, do I need to run across the line of scrimmage, run across the opposite side, and a line over there. So just little things like that. The next motion I'll talk about is what we call yo. We didn't run yo too often this year, kind of in the beginning of the year. So this is a week one opponent right here. So we're shifting our tight end off the line, and he's becoming an extra fullback. This is something that we'll do in like short yardage to get like a super counter or super power, like we call it, to gain an extra fullback in the run game. And another reason that we'll do it, and another way we'll line up in it, is, let's say our fullback who's in the game right now, he might line up as another tight end, and we might like a defensive look that we see in that look, and then quickly shift one off the line and have him be the fullback to run it at that look that we like to see. And just, if you look at this play right here, when we yo, the defense really doesn't know how to align. They got guys moving around, defensive line shifting, and by the time we're snapping the ball, they're still moving, and our tray blocks already on our deuce blocks already on to the next level, and we're running down the field. So kind of just taking advantage, knowing that they might not align correctly, to help us take advantage on offense. Our next type of motion that we use, this is our most common type. We call it rip and Liz. This is our rocket or jet motion, depending on your verbiage in your offense. We use this basically anytime we have a gap run. So I don't know if we ever run power or counter without this jet motion coming through. I'm really a big fan of it. One reason I love it is just because of the eye wash coming across the quarterback. With that dude running across right there, it might make the safeties take their eyes off their keys, the inside backers take their eyes off their keys, and kind of chase the motion, meaning they're not going to be in their power or counter run fill lanes, and just kind of taking advantage that way. And another reason that we do quite a bit of it is because when the ball is snapped right here, our O-line on 95% of these plays, they're blocking power, but it gives a lot of looks to the defense of what we could be running. When the ball snapped here, you don't know if it's going to be power. It could be our counter weak play. It could be our rocket play going to one of our faster wideouts, or it could be a take a shot play. So it's just a lot that a defense has to account for, while keeping it very simple for our offensive guys. So that's one of the main reasons that I'm a big fan of rip and Liz motion. The next one that I'll dive into here is what we call Rob and Lou. We did a little bit more this year than the previous 2 years. So that is our orbit motion with our wide receivers for kind of our gap scheme triple option, you might call it. And we run some lead option with this guy. So just different types of plays like that. Much like Rip or Liz, this is a good way to kind of have some eye wash and get defensive players to take their eyes off their correct reads and run fills. And another reason I like this type of motion is it can widen the overhangs, making our power kickout blocks easier. And let's say, same with Rip and Liz. Let's say you're playing a team that the safety's kind of rock and roll. So the strong safety's going to roll down, and the free safety kind of bumps to a middle high. It then changes all of their run fills that they typically would have if they're in a too high set. So just kind of taking advantage that way. So we did quite a bit of this year at points, and it's something I think as a team we'd like to do a little bit more of, depending on who our quarterback is and if he's a runner. So just adding this aspect into our game. So like once again, the main point that I kind of want to reiterate is like this takes a lot of scouting to see which motions you want to use that week and which ones you gain an advantage with. So looking at who teams have previously played and seeing what motions can kind of get you an advantage is something that you wanna be able to do, because you're not going to use necessarily all of these in 1 week, but just seeing if by moving this guy maybe we get a better run fill. So that's the main part of it, and just keeping it really simple for offensive guys, but yet making it complex on the defense. Because if you watched the majority of these plays, our O-line, from an O-line coach's standpoint, I love it because we're blocking power, but it gives a lot of looks to the defense on what else the play could be, and it kind of helps our power run game and our scheme on how we're doing things. So that's all I got for you. I hope you pick something up, and I just once again want to thank all you for tuning in. So it's pretty cool, and I look forward to joining these in the future.
One question for you, Matt. Do you ever let your QB make the checks at the line?
Like in terms of like the play, or
I'll ask here. I'd assume your trades.
Yeah, like flipping the play or, switching sides, whatever it is that you guys do.
we typically call that in. So the trades and the shifts we want to do, but it's all about stuff that we've scouted that week on a look we can get, or if maybe something we see during the game on how we can gain an advantage. So it's typically all called into the play.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.